I've never loved my camera. It was a tool, it was an object, until I got my first Leica S. That passion was actually allowing me to take better photographs. I'm Mark Mann and I'm a photographer based in New York City. I shoot advertising, I shoot editorial. My passion has always been to photograph people. I feel it's one of my best talents is to be thrown into a situation, know I only have a certain amount of time and make a lovely connection with this person. It's really important for me that when I look back at the photograph that I can see that there's something's happened between me and my subject. My client today is Lord Willie's, and they are a suit maker and tailor. And Alex came up with this idea to photograph his clients, who are all a very interesting mix of people, in their work situations, whereas often they wouldn't be wearing their suit. So today we have a wonderful yogi called Eddie Stern, and we are going to shoot him levitating over his desk in his Lord Willie's suit. There's very few situations that I can go into for any of my commissions that the S won't handle. Now with the CMOS chip and the low light capabilities, shooting 1600 ISO, fine. 3.5 frames per second, no problem. You need to shoot something fast, you can do it. And that's really made this an all-round workhorse. I love large format photography. I love shooting 4x5. And what I found with this medium format system and the 120 lens is that when I shoot a nice tight portrait, which is one of my favorite things to do, my depth of field fall off is so fast. Ergonomically, this camera feels brilliant in your hand. 35mm handling, but solid, and everything's kind of where you want it to be. Also, it's a huge viewfinder that really lets you frame a shot nicely. I'm not a deeply technical photographer in any manner of speaking. I go a lot with my gut and how it looks. And when the images come up on the screen, it almost has a feel about it that's more like a scanned film look. It feels more organic. You're starting from a really good place, and that allows you to get to your result a lot faster. I really regret not shooting with Leica cameras earlier because the quality of the images have got better since I started using the S system.
Today's photographer is Mark Mann. He is originally from the sun-soaked streets of Glasgow, Scotland. Mark Mann is a celebrity and advertising photographer. He attended the prestigious photographic program at Manchester Polytechnic. He assisted the innovative fashion photographers Nick Knight and Miles Aldridge. Learning the ropes and building his own body of work, 3 years later, Mark relocated to New York City. Mark's editorial work has been featured in such publications as Esquire, Men's Health, Vibe, Spin, Fortune, Billboard, and Parade. He's photographed countless celebrities, including Robert Redford, Michael Douglas, Iggy Pop, Jack Black, the Black Eyed Peas, and Sean Connery. Mark has also amassed a sizable advertising portfolio. His clients run the gamut from Reebok, Adidas, Hennessy, Bombay Sapphire, Pepsi, Gillette Vitamin Water, the NHL, Zumba, Ford, Chrysler, and Dell Computer. One of Mark's favorite projects was for Esquire magazine, entitled The Life of Man. Here, he photographed 80 American men, ages 1 to 80, to celebrate the 80 years of Esquire magazine. This project took Mark across the country and even to the White House to photograph then President Barack Obama, as well as former President Bill Clinton. So at this point, let's get the conversation going and welcome Mark Mann to it. And I think before we get too far into all these amazing portraits, Mark, I'm sure the audience wants to know what you've been doing.
Hi.
You there? Hey, wow,
I'm
you
so
look great.
nervous. Thanks for that lovely intro, John.
It was my pleasure.
I'm all like nervous.
You pumped up? Don't be nervous. You're among friends. Come on.
So often when I go to do a portrait, so often it's me and the subject and a couple of people, and I can talk crap for a couple of minutes and get out of there before anyone realizes that I don't know what I'm doing. And I always feel with Leica people that so many of them are so knowledgeable as I can't talk my usual crap because everyone will know I'm making stuff up. So, hopefully I'm asking you all to give me a break. Yeah.
Yeah, you'll be fine. So what have you been up to since the COVID-19 thing has put a lot of us on the sidelines in terms of work and being able to go out and shoot? What have you been up to?
I mean, the true honest answer to that question is definitely my photography has taken a bit of a backseat. I'm blessed to be in a safe place. I'm blessed to have enough food, but I have a 5-year-old and he needs homeschooled. And my wife is in a job where she is very committed all the time to work. So my primary responsibility has been teaching kindergarten to 5-year-old. And I kind of came up with them teaching kindergarten to kindergartner at kindergarten level. And I'm taking it quite seriously and I'm finding it very challenging. But in the time apart from that, there's a couple of things I've been doing that I'm very much enjoying, which is feeding my creativity. Number one, I have an archive of about 25 years, which I've promised myself I will go through and go through and go through to do a book. And every time, I have some downtime, I find some kind of excuse to procrastinate and not actually do anything about it. But this time I have been going back into the archive and looking at some of the early work and trying to pull some stuff to put this book together. And let me tell you, man, it's frightening. It's frightening. Yeah. It's frightening right now how little I know. And it's more frightening to go back how little I knew. I was trying to do stuff,
Right.
So
well, I've seen some of that work. Yeah, I've seen some of it on your Instagram feed as you've been resurrecting those images. But no, I think that's exciting news for all the Mark Mann fans out there that there will be an amazing book coming to print
like that.
with all his. Yeah, I'm holding you to it, man. All right, so let's. Should we proceed with some portraitures and get some stories? I think first up is Carl the Greenskeeper in Caddyshack.
Man,
or is it Groundhog Day?
As I've said before about photography and taking pictures, when all's said and done, you do your best on the day. You try and get your light right. You try and get your exposure correct. Most importantly, if anyone's ever talked to me or whatever, you try and get a connection with the human being that you're photographing. And then, you make some images and you just hope that, the photo gods come together and give you something. And then, as my career got on, I've been incredibly fortunate enough to have the opportunity to put my camera in front of some well-known people. And, Bill Murray is absolutely one of my heroes. I mean, comic legend. Yeah. And, one of the questions I'm sure somebody will ask you here is that I'm going to answer it is, people say, oh, do you still get nervous? And I mean, like right now I'm actually shaking a little bit. And that's kind of the level of anxiety I have for any shoot. I think I've managed to guard it pretty well. And I don't come off as nervous. I think I try and come off as confident. But, I always have the inner butterflies. So cut long story short on this one, or not that short, but Bill Murray has no agent, has no publicist, and has a 1-800 number. And we were doing this project for Esquire, and David Granger, who was the editor-in-chief of Esquire at the time, said, Bill Murray's agreed to do the shoot. Here's his number, call him and set it up. So, okay, usually I'm used to dealing with publicists. I got 800 number. Hey, this is Bill Murray, leave a message. Hi, Mr. Murray, this is Mark Mann. Can we, David Granger said, left a message. I was driving upstate or something, and the phone rang. It was a 1-800 number. I didn't answer it. Anyway, listen to the message. It's basically Bill Murray, and he said, the message says, "Hi, Mark, just come over to the set. I'm shooting in Brooklyn. Can you come around Tuesday about 5 p.m. if I'm not there waiting my trailer?" Okay, so we get over to the set, and I'm not going to go in his trailer without him there. So I'm sitting in the car, and me and my sister are both, sorry? We're both sitting on our phones, and in the car waiting, and there's a tap in the window. And I kind of look up towards the glass, and there's like Bill Murray's face right up at the window. And he's like this, take down the window. So I put down the window, and he was obviously in a great, entertaining mood. He says, "You Mark?" I said, "Yep." He goes, "Okay, let's go." I said, "It's so great to meet you, Mr. Murray." He goes, "Call me doctor." And for basically the rest of our interaction, he made me call him doctor, which was really, really bizarre. So, "Okay, Dr. Murray, are we ready? Can we take some photos?" He goes, "Well, you know what? Why don't we have a cup of coffee first?" I said, "Okay." So, the bottom line is you're in this crazy position because you're getting to hang out with one of your heroes, who's Bill Murray. But the bottom line is you got a job to do. You got to get your photo of Bill Murray, and he is like avoiding sitting in front of the camera. So we have a cup of coffee, right. And then he says, I've got one scene to do. Do you mind if we do the scene first before you take my picture? I was like, "No problem, Mr. Murray." He's like, "Dr. Murray." I'm like, "Okay, Dr. Murray." So he puts his arm around me and he walks me to set, and he introduces me to everybody on the cast, Melissa McCarthy, the director, and he introduces me as Mark, his special friend. This is Mark, he's my special friend. And I don't know my up from down. I am so confused by all this. So he does this scene, and then I said, "Dr. Murray, can I take the photo?" He goes, "Yeah, sure." And he sits down, and we make this picture. And I said, "Thank you so much. I felt so great." And then we started talking about golf. And then before I know it, like we've got this piece of green turf out in front of his trailer in Brooklyn, and he's helping me with my golf swing. And it was just one of the most fantastic, hour and a half experiences of my life. Mm. And the bottom line with the story come with that is that, when all said and done, all you've got left are your photos and the memories. The money comes, the money goes, whatever, but right. This is, I think, really what enriches me to think back on the experiences and hope that there's some kind of reasonable picture that kind of will remind me of it.
Right, so this was part of the Esquire? It was part of the Esquire project?
Yeah. Am I talking too much?
No, you want to go to the next?
Sure.
I think we've got 500 images.
I don't think I've made.
There you go.
There's another one. Yeah, same shoot actually.
Okay.
And this was just another one of these times that you're gonna spend some minute with Robin Williams, and basically we shot it in Hollywood, and they gave us this big sound stage to shoot in. And my rig for this was like a tiny little, like a tripod with a light and my camera in it, and that was my whole rig, because I knew I was going to be in some tight spots. So, we're kind of set up at the far end of this sound stage, and it's in Hollywood in California, and the door opens on the other side of the stage, and we just see this little figure walking towards us, and it was beautiful. Right. It was through the sunlight, and he comes towards us, and he's got no one with him. He goes, and he does that thing that people do that I never quite know how to answer. He goes, "Hi, I'm Robin." I'm like, "Hi, I'm Mark." What do you say? So, so nice to meet you,
Right.
Mr. Williams. Such a pleasure. He goes, "Oh, you're Scottish." I said, "Yeah, I'm Scottish." And then he goes into Mrs. Doubtfire. He does Mrs. Doubtfire for about 10 minutes. And then he does an impersonation of Mel Gibson in Braveheart perfectly. And then he goes through another Scottish, one of my favorite comedians, a guy called Billy Connolly, and he does that. And his accents, his Scottish accents were so nuanced that he could do different Scottish characters. And he really cracked me up. And, you know, just this photo is a genuine moment. You know, I was very, 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 very lucky to just press the shutter in time that he was talking and giving me that face. And it's just, this picture is just ingrained in my memory as one of my all-time favorites. It's probably not sharp.
Yeah, it's a great image.
But it just...
All right, let's see what we have next.
Oh, we're moving that fast, are we? Ooh, Michael Douglas. I've shot Mr. Douglas a few times. One of the first times I photographed him was just after he recovered from his cancer. And this was a couple of years later where he was doing really well. And, you know, I suppose one of the things that I'm interested in photography is some of the great, some painters, and, you know, whether it be, you know, I mean, Rembrandt's one of my favorites. I know it's kind of like everybody loves Rembrandt, but there's something about Rembrandt and the Rembrandt look. And, you know, it's usually my go-to starting position for this kind of portrait to try and do, I think, what people call Rembrandt light. And something just happened in this picture that just the light was right, the expression was right. He looked at me the right way. I said the right thing. And it's not often, I mean, it's very rare that I think, you know, oh, I did all right here. But this is a picture that I'm just super proud of. And he liked it because he looked pretty well. Lovely guy. I really enjoy. I think I photographed him 3 or 4 times, and he's lovely. He remembers, you know, hey, yeah, I remember this guy. He's fast. People remember you a lot as a photographer when you're fast. I love this guy. He's super fast.
All right.
What are you gonna do?
Here you go, Anna.
Oh yeah, this is
I remember that day.
Anna de Anas, and she's, I think she's a new Bond girl. You know, sometimes you just like quite often when you're waiting for somebody to come in and sit down, and they come in and you go, wow, they don't look that great, or they don't look like I think they're gonna look, or this doesn't look like much. And she was a little bit like that. She came in and, you know, she walked past and went, "Is that her?" And everyone said, "Oh, that's her." And then she came and she sat down in front of the camera. And I think this is like frame 2 or 3. And she had her head down. She just looked up at me and looked into the lens, and I pressed the button. And I knew that was the shot. I knew there was no way I was getting better. You know, there's some other shots that I got where, I managed to make her laugh or smile. But this one, I just, you know, sometimes, especially with a Leica camera, with my 007, or, you know, you're looking through this big viewfinder and it's really very clear. And I think I probably blushed a little when her eyes came up and just gave me that look. So I really dig that shot as well. It's nice. And it's got
that was, I was just going to say that was for during Tribeca, I think 2017, something like that,
that was
right?
2017. I was super excited to do Tribeca this year. I'm so bummed we never got an opportunity to do it. But yeah, why she's staring at me? Go, oh, Adam. I think what I really like about this picture and why I put it in here is that he's so incredibly handsome to me, but his face is so weird. And I think that's, you know, as a portrait photographer, I think I get this opportunity, you know, I've got my camera, and I love faces. I love looking at faces. I love examining faces. And it's very hard to do in real life because people kind of think, what are you looking at? But what's so brilliant is when you lift your camera up to your eye, you know, I can really examine somebody's face and go, wow, his nose really goes that way, and his mouth's on the wrong side, and this is kind of weird looking. And I get this real couple of minutes to be a little voyeuristic, and I think that definitely happened in this picture. But I hear a lot, oh, you know, why'd you use Leica? Why'd you use Leica? Why'd you use Leica? And I think this is a really good example of that. This is my total favorite setup, the S system with the 100. Is it F2, John?
Yeah, the 100 F2.
No, mine's the
Or
one.
were you using the 120?
Oh, it's the 120. It's a
120-2.5.
right?
And you're shooting. Everyone wants to know you shoot wide open.
Yeah. So this
Normally?
is wide open, and
Yeah.
and I found that shooting wide open just, it helps give a dimension to my pictures. It gives a 3-dimension where it almost feels like 3-dimensional, and it's something I've been really striving for in the last couple of years. And this one seemed to work pretty well for me. It's got a lovely 3-dimension on it. And in honesty, is that, you know, usually when I look at a picture, I'm more excited about the communication or what happened between me and the sitter. Mr. Driver is very guarded, and I don't really think I got through to him. But for some reason, this picture feels like there's a connection, even though I'm not sure it's a real one. Makes sense?
Yeah. What was that for? What project was that for?
This was for Deadline Hollywood.
Okay.
And I have no idea what it was for.
Okay. All right. Christina.
Yeah, this is another one. I love my ring light. I think that the ring light is a great equalizer. And, you know, this is another example of somebody who just, you know, can give you the eyes, and then when you see the eyes and you press the button at the right time, you just, I'm just mesmerized. I was mesmerized by her. And she's kind of goofy, and she's kind of like, you know, sweet and kind of goofy and whatever, but then just these people that just sit down. And, you know, I didn't, this photo I had to work for, and, you know, she was doing her stuff, and I just said, Christine, game face, give me game face. And she just did that, she kind of got the chin and gave me the eye.
Wow, that's great.
And that's what happened.
So for an image like this, what was your lighting setup? What's the go-to? A lot of people have interest in, you know, you're using a ring light, but it looks like there's a backlight going on.
It's definitely a ring light. I don't think there's a backlight here. I think it's a ring light on a white background that's pretty close.
Okay.
Very, very rarely when I'm using the ring light do I use any other lights.
Okay.
I think it does enough. But, you know, the thing with the ring light, and if anybody's interested in trying one, the big thing with the ring light is that, you know, LED lights fall off very differently than strobe. So even a distance of a couple of inches can make quite a lot of difference to how the light shapes the face. I don't know the technical terms for that, but so you know, I like to play around. And the other thing I really like with the ring light, and it's something I try and do, and it's kind of hard because it's very intrusive, is I like the ring in the eye to be super big. So in order to get it super big, it's got to be really close. So you know, that's another thing I play around with.
Okay, so sometimes you know, the talent objects to the ring light, like it's too bright for them, or?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think. I mean,
or not usually.
Nah, because actually, one of the things about this particular light, the closer it is, it's almost the less intrusive it is, because it's more, It's more on the side of your vision. Also, it has control, so this has turned
Okay.
down really low. So I don't know, if it goes up to 100, then this is maybe 7 or 8, really, really low.
Okay.
And what's great about the modern cameras, and like a color space on the 007 with the CMOS chip. With the CMOS chip,
Yep.
is I can certainly shoot higher ISOs and not have to compromise. Not have to worry. So wide open with higher ISO and need less light to make the image.
Okay. Let's
Am I
go
talking
to the
too
next
much?
one. No, I think no. People want they want to know
Okay.
some of your lighting, and they love
Sure.
your stories.
Okay. This is Reese Weatherfork, or Spoon. Another situation, people, it's funny, shooting celebrity is amazing, fun and exciting and all these things. But, a lot of these people who I photograph have been photographed so many times that they know what they want to give, and they know, how they want to do it, and they know how they look best. So I take on the challenge as a photographer to try and, I've kind of touched on this before, is I want to make something happen between me and the subject, and then record that moment so there's an interaction. And the interaction might not be incredibly obvious, but as long as there was some authenticity of a moment between me and the subject, and I managed to press the button at that correct time, then I'm very satisfied. And this was one where I definitely had to work super hard to get through a little bit. And I can't remember what I said, but I said something that was verging on inappropriate. And that was the look I got just before she laughed, because she was trying not to laugh.
Right.
And, and it's always risky doing that, because, you might offend somebody. And yeah, I've only been in her company like a few minutes. I mean, not super inappropriate. I mean, just something that's maybe on the edge. I mean, John, you've been around me when I shoot enough. I'm not,
Yes.
I try not to.
No. In general, how much time would you have to create a portrait like this?
I think we had half an hour with her.
Okay.
Half an hour. I try and listen, and I've said this. So I've said this before as well. When you're shooting a portrait, especially of somebody you've never met before, right? You've got you get a little bit of time in that beginning where I certainly don't just bring up my camera and go, hey, how you doing? How's your day? What was the traffic like in LA? How are the kids? A little bit of conversation, just to try and put yourself on the same level as that person. I know we're both here. I know that you hate having this done. Sometimes I'll even say, you don't want to be here, I don't want to be here, but let's get it done super fast so we can both go home. Or just like, just if I've got half an hour to shoot, right? If somebody said you've got half an hour, Mark, I would just really like to spend 10 minutes talking and 20 minutes shooting. Or 15 minutes talking. Because the bottom line is, what I'm going for usually happens within the first 20, 30 frames. And if it doesn't happen in the first 20, 30 frames, you kind of see eyes glaze over, and they've gone, and I've gone, and the connection's gone. So I'm much more interested in having time to set up and get my light right. Much more interested in being able to have a little chat and a little conversation than I'm actually for how much time I need to, with digital, one of the scary things is you can, so I just don't want to do that. I want to think before I press the shutter every time. I'm coming from a film background, I used to shoot with an RZ67, which was 10 frames on on a back, and you would shoot
Right.
10 frames, and then you would change the back, you know, or somebody would change the back. So, you know, and often in your head you would, or I would count to 10. So, because I didn't want to blow the moment of when something good was happening, and I'd have to put the camera down or so even in my head now, I'm very much like one.
Right.
Two,
So the lighting on this shot, I mean, it doesn't look like it was a ring light. So was this, you're using a roll light, you think, or
yeah, this is
just a
two
couple?
rotolights.
Okay, two rotolights.
Yeah, the first one is kind of pretty close,
Mm-hmm.
up to the right, just where the bigger circle is, just above her
Right.
head. The second one is further back as a fill, probably
Okay.
about maybe twice the power of the first
Mhm.
one. And then I definitely remember that I had an assistant with a fill card for underneath her chin, but simple lighting,
Okay.
really simple
Yeah.
lighting. You
Great.
know, it's important for me. It's important that, you know, I don't want to get bogged down in the details of photography. It's not what I
Mhm.
do. I sometimes I'll look at a photograph that's technically brilliant, and it blows my mind how somebody had the ability to do everything that they did and still do that. I'm not. That's not where I'm at. If I'm worrying about, you know, if I'm worrying about the light, or if I'm worrying about this, or I don't get the picture. So
Right.
my go-to is to try and keep it simple and allow it to work in, you know, a little bit left, a little bit right, you know, that kind of thing.
Right. Sounds good. All right. Well, we're about at the halfway point.
What?
Antonio, are there any questions? It's crazy. Time's flying, man. Antonio, were there any questions that you wanted to bring up, or should we go on to the next image?
There are lots of questions, actually, Mark. People are dying to know your secrets, of course, to lighting, to your technique. Mark, I would say the way we can kind of summarize a lot of these questions about lighting. We talked briefly about the rotolight and the ring light options that you use. Do you have kind of a go-to lighting setup that you'll do maybe if you're in a pinch, or do you pre-visualize different lighting setups depending on the subject?
The ring light is pretty standard, but the ring light it looks super easy, and it is a very easy, very convenient light, but you got to practice with it. I think what's really important is, of course, I have my go-tos. I know if I put this here and that there, I'm going to get this. I think, yeah, of course, I know that, you know, in a situation, I can always create some kind of reasonable light. What is more challenging and much more interesting and fun is to just push the boundaries a little bit. Ooh, that was nice. Who was that? Look at that. So, you know, here's, are you going through these pictures?
Yeah, I was just going to go through while you're
Okay.
talking,
Can you go
and if
back
something
to
hits you,
Center? Not Ayrton Senna.
to who?
This guy. Who's that?
Ma-
Does anybody know who that
It's
is?
Mario Andretti, I think.
I gotta just tell you about Mario Andretti, right? You know, first of all, he moves so fast that it's really hard to get him in focus. Oh, sorry. One amazing. So yeah, so here's a situation where this particular job was very specific, and this is not the shot that was used for the particular job, but you know, you get an opportunity to photograph Ayrton Senna. I mean, why do I keep saying that? I'm crazy. Mario Andretti. And, you know, what am I going to do with Mario Andretti? So, you know, I had this idea that I wanted to do rim light, and I wanted to do 2 rim lights, and I wanted to do very narrow, you know, like a Mark Mann shot that I've done many times. And he's been incredibly accommodating to us, but he's told me I got 10 minutes and then he's got a hard out because he's got to go somewhere. And for some bizarre reason, the plug socket that we were using, one power blew, then I blew the other socket, and I had, you know, one light that was working. And all right, what am I going to do with one light? and then, you know, you work it out. And that was part of what I was kind of saying before. It's like, it's really interesting to challenge yourself, whether it be to minimize your equipment, whether it be to say, hey, I'm only going to use 2 lights on this. What can I do? I'm only going to use 1 light on this and a full card. What am I going to do? And setting yourself these challenges, I find it helps you as a photographer. I'm always trying to burst through new lights. I've got a wonderful photo assistant and business partner, Alex, and Alex is, you know, way more technical than I am. And, you know, we'll be in a situation and I'll say, hey, Alex, let's do this, 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 and this, with this. And they'll go, hey, have you thought about doing this with that? And I'm like, no, I never thought about that. And, you know, the fact that we try it and either it works or it doesn't work. So it's a lot of trial and error. But the basics are the basics, you know, you put a light up, work it around yourself. If you're just beginning in this photography, I know a lot of people who are not in this position, but if you're really beginning, one of the exercises that I did, you got to stop on the Gillian Anderson because I know people want to talk.
Everybody wants to know the story.
That's
That's next up, man. So
one of the things that you can do, which I found incredibly helpful and still kind of do, is if you get like one of these really inexpensive stainless steel bulb holders, you know, that is just a bulb and a shield. You can kind of hold it in your hand. And I go into the bathroom with it, put the light on, and just start holding that light and just see where things start to happen on your own face. Because it's really interesting because you know your own face probably better than anybody else. So so you can really see what's working and where it's working. And this is something I suppose if I have like photo block or I can't get my head around something, this sounds terrible, I'll go into a bathroom in a dark space with 1 light and kind of put it around on my face. But that is an exercise that I do. And I think it's a really good way to kind of work out.
Amazing advice. Amazing.
Yeah, brilliant.
Yeah. What, John?
It's amazing advice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Go into the bathroom
Right.
in the dark.
I think it's brilliant to be able to do that and kind of like recenter or reset yourself and think back to the basics is fantastic. I think I'll ask one more question before you continue with the story of Gillian and David. So a lot of people have also been asking about your approach to breaking the ice. You talked a little bit of some little stories here and there. Is there like a go-to thing you'll say to someone if you're not familiar with them to kind of break the ice? Like, do you lean on with a certain subject? And then the follow-up to that would be similar to your talk about what's good for people getting into this. What do you say to people who don't always feel comfortable and how to get more comfortable talking to someone to take their portrait, especially in this kind of manner?
You know, when you're going to I treat every interaction with every human I come across like the potential before a photograph, right? It's just ingrained into me. So I walk into now people think I'm crazy. I walk into the gas station like, hey, how you doing? How's your day? Because I want to see what it does, right? My genuine advice is kill them with kindness. Smile, be warm, be genuine. Listen, it's easy advice for me because I've managed to fake being genuine, which is very hard. And when you can fake sincerity, you have it made. But honestly, it's just, I treat every interaction with anyone the same as I would with when somebody comes in to sit. You know, it's like, we're both here for a purpose. How you doing? How's your day? What'd you have for breakfast? You know, coffee's quite good if you want one. How are the kids? Because the one thing that you don't want to do, and I know kind of people know this, is, oh man, I loved you in that movie in 1987, you know, or wow, you know, that was really impressive when you won that gold medal. You know, nobody wants to know that. It's like, you know, people don't, if somebody's willing to talk about it, then it's great to get into it. And I think it's really nice when you can tell somebody that you appreciate their work on a genuine level Like if you know, definitely people I've met that have said, man, that movie or that thing was just amazing. But it's not the first thing. The first thing is just, you know, you're two human beings. You both eat. You both drink. You both burp. We're equals here. Let's just have a connection as equals.
Fantastic.
So I don't know if that works, and just be genuine. Oh, and what's really, 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 really important is show no fear, because people can smell fear a mile away. So, in saying that, if you are nervous, it's kind of not a bad idea to say, I'm really nervous, because everyone will think you're kidding, but you're not. But, you know, the more confident you are in what you're doing, the more confident they'll be in what they're doing. And it doesn't matter you know, if the first shot is absolutely terrible, and this first shot comes up on the computer when everybody's watching, and you know, the publicist and the hair makeup artist and the stylist and the grandmother and all the people that are watching from behind, they all have an opinion, and you know, you have to take a photo and it comes up and it's 4 stops over and it's out of focus and the composition's crap. What you have to do is go, oh my God, that is beautiful. You look fantastic. I cannot believe how great this is. It might be a little hot and we can work on the focus, but you look brilliant. And I guarantee that the person that you're working with is going to go, cool, this guy's all right. So, you know, semi-joking, not joking, show no fear, be confident in what you're doing. If it's not going right, just change it. Change something. You know, you take 20 frames and it's not going right, go, you know what, that's great, let's move on. You know, let's do something different. So, you know, don't flog a dead horse. Is that the expression? Mm-hmm. Don't just keep trying to get it. Do something different. Move a light. Change the atmosphere in the room. Change the music. You know, do something proactive to make it better. To try and change what's going on.
That's great. That's for everyone here. I think that's some $1 million advice from Mark Mann for everyone.
Definitely,
I'm going to turn it back over to John.
I would take $1 for it.
I know everyone's dying to hear your story about this portrait, so I'll turn it back over. Thank you.
So first of all, I've got to say that I've been incredibly fortunate and blessed to photograph a lot of people that are very well known, but never from the Bradley Coopers, the Robert Redfords, the Bill Murrays, the Robin Williams. Never have I come across a group of fans that are so dedicated and so incredibly nice and warm and wonderful as to the fans of Gillian Anderson and David Duchovny. They keep me permanently amused on Instagram. They're so lovely. They're so dedicated. I've never really got to speak to you guys all at kind of once. I know some of you are watching, just to say thank you. You're all brilliant and I love you all. So this was for, I think they were up for a potential Emmy for a final season of the X-Files. And I wasn't particularly an X-Files fan, or a Gillian Anderson fan, or a David Duchovny fan. But, you know, I was kind of excited because, you know, I knew the X-Files was a big deal. And, you know, it was interesting because Gillian came in about 45 minutes before the shoot to have her hair and makeup done. And I had kind of had a little break in shooting. We were shooting some other people that day. And kind of my usual thing is to kind of go into the makeup room and say, hey, I'm Mark, I'm going to be taking your picture. Everything all right? Can I get you anything? And then kind of exit pretty fast. And I started talking and she answered and she started talking and I sat down and, she said, I said, do you need anything? She goes, no, but could chat with me, I'm bored. And we had this like really nice half-an-hour chat. And I'm not sure if my wife is watching, but I was absolutely enamored. I mean, I was so enamored. I was, well, you know, whatever. And then I'm looking at her thinking, oh my God, you are I never thought of her as such a beautiful woman as when I'd spent some time with her. And then, you know, Mr. Duchovny arrives and the two of them obviously had not seen each other I don't know, for a little while. And the atmosphere and the electricity when they kind of came out of this little dressing room area together was really electric. They were really both in great moods. They were both having a lot of fun. And I didn't really have to do any kind of direction. And there was just this kind of 1 second where she leaned in to whisper something to him. And that's this shot here. And this was not really how I'd framed the shot, but I was standing back because I wasn't actually shooting at that moment. And I kind of stood back to do something different. And I looked over, my camera was maybe down, and I looked and I just saw this little interaction, which I know that it wasn't given to me. I took it. It's a bit naughty, but I clicked that photo and I just caught it at this right minute. And I got this brilliant picture, which I kind of left all the stuff in at the sides. And just for all the people out there that love them, they're both wonderful. Yeah, thank you to you all.
So Mark, I have a question that came up in the chat. They're asking, if you hadn't ended up being a photographer, what would you have fallen back on? A magician or a charismatic cult leader, perhaps? Or
what do I love?
What do you think?
Look at that. How beautiful is she? Oh my God.
Incredible.
So lovely. What would I have done? I don't know. I mean, I like, I think it would have been something, I don't know what it would have been, but it would have definitely have been something where I got to, sorry, I'm just looking at my computer. It says,
Yep.
My battery is low, which is weird. Hang on a sec. That's weird because it's charging. Okay, don't know why that's happening. It would definitely have been something where I would be talking to people.
Okay.
My dad passed away about 13 years ago, and he was the best salesman on planet Earth. And he was such a genuinely lovely salesman. My brother's in sales and my nephew's in sales, and they're all really good salesmen. I was never a good salesman, but I was a good opener. You know, I'm good at opening up the conversation, but I'm not a closer. Right. So it would definitely, I think, have been something where I would get to talk to people and be around people. I hope. But don't listen, every day I think, what am I going to do when I'm not a photographer anymore? Because every morning I wake up and I actually can't believe that this is what I do.
Okay.
That's
so how about, what's the backstory on this? I guess it was part of the Esquire project.
Yeah, this is an Obama stand-in. He looks really like him, right?
Yeah. Yes.
You know,
yes.
I'm an immigrant to this country, and to go to the White House as an immigrant to this country is one of the biggest honors I've ever had in my life. It's you go to the White House and it's almost like this. It's like white glove airport security, and you know you're being invited. You know they know you're coming. You know we got to the gate of the White House and they're kind of like, "Hi, we're here from Esquire magazine and we're here to photograph the president." Like, yeah, we know who you are. Okay. So they kind of take you in through security and then, you know, whatever. And then when you get into the White House itself, there's not a lot of security. It's kind of like you're in, you've been checked, you're kind of cool. And they took us into this diplomatic room, which is that central room. You know, if you look at, if you think of the White House, there's you know, the arches on one side and the columns on the other. Well, this is the room right in the center of where that is between the East Wing and the West Wing. And, you know, it's where the president or you meet a lot of officials. That's where officials are met. And the first thing that happens is my creative director, a guy called David Cucurito, comes in and he takes off his jacket and he throws it over that yellow couch that you can see there. It's pretty hot. And this Secret Service guy goes, "Sir, the last person to sit on that couch was probably Lincoln. Would you mind moving your jacket?"
Wow.
So you kind of realize you're in a
crazy.
museum.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, you wait and you wait and you wait, and all of a sudden you start to hear the Secret Service radios POTUS leaving West Wing, you know, POTUS traveling, you know, and all of a sudden I'm expecting somebody to go, "Ladies and gentlemen, the President of the United States of America." But it's his house, so he just walks in, right? He just walks
Right.
into the room, and all of a sudden you're in the room with the President of the United States of America. He's in the same room as you. And I'm speechless, which is an unusual situation for me. So he goes, "What are we doing here? What are we doing here?" No, not like that. He said, "Well, so what are we doing here, guys?" I said, "Mr. President, could you just stand on that X that I've marked?" And he goes over, and I pick up the camera, and I go, "Oh, wait a minute. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. I haven't introduced myself. I haven't said hello. It goes against everything I believe in photography. I'm going to go and introduce myself." So I take my camera, and I put it down by my side, and I start to take a couple of steps towards him. And I can see the Secret Service guys moving in from the side. They're watching
Ready
me.
to jump you at any second.
And I just kind of talk about it, sort of like, "Mr. President," I was blabbering. "Mr. President,
Right.
I'm an immigrant to this country. It's such an honor to be here in your house with you. And thank you very much for having me." And I can see him going, I thought, "Oh yeah, I don't have him." So I step back, I pick up my camera, and I go, "Busy day, sir?" And that's what got him. And he was like, And I got maybe 10 or 12 frames where I know he had connected with me. And then I could kind of see his eyes glaze over as he went off into his next meeting. But yes, very, very, very special day. Very
So why strobes on this shoot versus,
It was
constant light?
before my relationship with Rotalight.
Okay.
And I, even in this situation, again, although I'm a huge lover of Rotalight and I love Rotalight, in a situation like this where I'm doing a full-length thing with an environment, strobes are the way to go. I mean, for this particular. Another kind of funny story about this particular shoot, which is worth mentioning, is, we had some time to set up, definitely, but there was 4 of us allowed there. I would have liked 2 assistants because, it was a lot to do, but I was allowed 1 assistant. So we get in, I start unpacking stuff and setting up stands and getting my, digital cart ready. And this kind of Secret Service guy goes, "Are you a photographer?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Mark. I'm a photographer. Nice to meet you." I was like, "Okay." And I'm busy. And he goes, then 2 minutes later, he goes, "Are you sure you're the photographer?" I said, "Yeah, I'm Mark. I'm a photographer." So anyway, I said, "Why are you asking me if I'm the photographer?" He said, "Because we had a photographer in here last week, and all she did was run about shaking her arms and shouting at everybody else." I said, "Oh, her name was Annie something? Annie?" So, it was kind of interesting perspective on things. He's one of my favorite human beings on earth, Alan Cummings. One of the reasons I put this shot in is because I very, very often forget to get out and see more of what's going on around me.
I want to hear about this story with Snoop. I know that now, because it's technical difficulties, we're going to go a little long now, so we appreciate everyone hanging with us through there. I do want to mention also, before anyone else maybe has to get going, before we move into overtime, that Mark is now offering workshops with Leica Academy with a special bespoke sessions available. Our colleagues in the chat are posting the information right now. So somebody mentioned earlier that they would love to be able to take a workshop, some online programming with Mark and learn from him, pick his brain one-to-one. Well, that's your opportunity, and it's available for a limited time. So please check the chat if you're interested. Click that link that we're posting and take a look at that. But in the meantime, Mark, if you're still with us and you can still hear us, and we can still get a few more minutes of your time, we want to know the story behind the Snoop shoot, if you could be so kind.
I've been super fortunate to once again photograph Snoop a few times. If you ever meet him, certainly won't know my name, but if you say Scottish photographer Mark, you'll absolutely know who I am, because he likes to take the piss out of my accent. And Snoop does a fairly reasonable Scottish accent, to be honest. This is part of a bigger shoot where I shot Snoop, Method Man, Redman, and Be Real in one day. And it was in LA, and we were in a photo studio, and it was a fairly cold day in LA, so all the doors and the windows were closed. And I'm in no way a weed smoker. I'm a total, I can't, it just makes me crazy. And by the time I actually had the camera in my hand, I swear my contact high was so bad that I hardly knew where I was and how I was. And I was completely on autopilot, because I knew I had to get through this, and I was so high, not happily. And, you know, I had two fabulous assistants that day, and I relied incredibly heavily on them for the lighting. And I just kind of remember, you know, I knew that I wanted to get close up, and I remember this particular frame. And I remember I was looking through the camera, and everything came into place. I think I'd been kind of messing around and wasn't actually shooting. And I think Snoop was just doing his thing. He wasn't posing here. He was just kind of doing his thing. And all of a sudden I saw that the joint go left and work with the ring, and then the glasses kind of go the other way. And I have some vague memories of taking these photos. And, you know, looking back into the archive, I found this one. What was so surprising was that afterwards, when, you know, I was so paranoid about how my behavior had been, but apparently I was kind of totally normal, and nobody knew. But I remember like packing up my gear. I had like a flight to LA, flight back to New York, and I had a rental car, and I had to get back to New York, and I was in no physical position that I could drive myself back to LAX. I remember one of my photo assistants actually giving me a ride to LAX, and I remember like reeking of weed from being in this enclosed studio with all these people going on a red eye back to New York. So, you know, once again, you just left with the stories, right? Yeah. I mean, that's what you're left with. But yeah, Snoop, I love photographing people like Snoop. He's such big personalities. Oh yeah, same shit.
Is that,
you know, I put this in for a reason, John, because so I came up shooting music, and I came up shooting a lot of hip hop and a little bit of rock and roll. And this is a shot that I took a lot of years ago. And the reason I put it in is because people ask me quite often, oh, you shoot everything wide open, wide open, wide open. Well, back when I started, I was very much forced to shoot everything f/32 because I was shooting music or I was shooting hip hop, and everybody moved so much, and I wanted energy, and I wanted energy, and I wanted energy, and I wanted people to be dancing and jumping and shouting and, you know, doing all these kind of things. And, you know, when I started doing that, every shot I took was out of focus. It was pretty much pre-autofocus cameras, so the big RZ and your and that. So, you know, one of the things that I did was I started to shoot everything f/32. Like, I don't care what it is, let's close down that lens as much as possible. Let's get these biggest lights that we can get, and that was my style. And it worked because, you know, a shot like this of Iggy, you know, he's moving fast. I mean, that's real, but I was managed to capture this stuff. So I think when everything kind of, when I started to focus more on portraiture and getting closer into people's faces, all of a sudden nothing was moving that fast. And I think probably one day by accident, I just had turned the aperture the other way. Instead of f/32, I was wide open. And I took some photos of a friend, and I was like, oh, that's really interesting. How have I done that? Don't get me wrong, I kind of had an understanding of aperture, but I'd never thought about shooting wide open. And then very, very, very quickly after that, I was introduced to Leica Glass. And that's, I think, in the last few years, when things have begun to come together a little bit, and I have a bit more of an idea of what I want a picture to look like. Another couple of years, and I think I might have mastered that 120 lens.
All right, let's see. Do we have time for a couple more, or what do you think, Antonio?
I'm gonna say go for it.
That's
I
beautiful.
appreciate everyone sticking around through our technical difficulties. So let's give it a little bit extra.
Yeah, sure.
So John Krasinski, I've once again been fortunate enough to photograph him a couple of times, and he came in with this kind of woolly sweater on and the beard, and I just thought of like Kershaw Hemingway. I thought, wow, it looks a little Hemingway-ish.
Definitely.
So super fast to the internet to remind myself what that kind of Hemingway looked like. Okay, let's do this. And it was a completely different thing than I thought about. But it was just something about when he came in with the sweater and the hair and the beard. I thought, okay, I'm going to totally steal from Kirsch and try and make you look like Hemingway. Failed miserably, but it was experimental, and I think there's 2 lights there. And I mean, I look at this and I love the photo, but very often when I'm looking back at photos like this, I'm thinking, if only I'd done this, or if only I'd done that. What could I change to make this more something I want to shoot? And there's very, very little catchlight in his eyes, and I think I think it doesn't pop as much as I'd wanted. And if I had another few minutes, or if I had another chance to do this, I think I would have brought the light that's on this side down a little bit, or maybe got a reflector in, so I got something in the eyes. But but I love the feel of it. I just don't love. There's always look back and think, how could I improve that? How could I do that better? What would I do different? And this one's very glaringly obvious to me.
So an image like this, how much time would you spend, say, retouching and taking that raw Leica image and crafting a portrait like this?
That's
you don't retouch, right?
John.
Okay, forgive me. That's a ridiculous question.
Retouching is a really interesting thing. It's another whole talk. I typically spend a lot of time with the image. Now, my kind of rule, and I don't know who said this to me, but it's a kind of a rule I kind of like to go by. If it wasn't on his face yesterday and it's not going to be on his face tomorrow, I'll take it off, right? If you've got like a pluck or a big zit or just a cold sore or something, all right, it's a moment in time. But if you've earned these lines from your life, or you haven't earned the lines, then I'm going to leave them. What I do spend a lot of time with is my dodging and burning. I came from the dark room, so as I'm sure a lot of you will know, it's like little bits of cardboard and masks and dodging and burning and sides and making the eyes brighter. So I would like to say, but I would be lying, that a lot of what I do, you could do in the darkroom. A lot easier with Photoshop. But I use a lot of big brushes, and I do a lot of darkening and lightening and darkening and lightening. But the actual retouching, not so much. But a lot of time working with the image and how I want, where I want it to be dark, where I want it to be light. So for this image, I can imagine, I can't quite remember, but going in with a very, very small brush and like hitting like a couple of these hairs on the chin to really get it to pop, and going in with a brush and just lightening up the hair. So a lot of dodging and burning, a lot of dodging and burning, but not that much crazy time like fixing skin or, I mean, I don't liquefy or make people thinner. I don't, or fatter. I don't make eyes bigger or smaller. So most of the time is dodging and burning.
So on a shoot like this, how many images would you normally take? I mean, you said you normally have maybe a half hour, maybe 15 minutes, maybe 3 minutes.
If I
I'm guessing
shoot,
it's all over the board.
I kind of think of it as like a 10 roll rule. Like when I used to do portraits, I used to do 10 rolls, like 100 images, you know? I like to take about 100 for,
Right.
I mean, if I can. Can you go back to Al Pacino?
There you go.
So,
You got a great story.
no, I just, this is a really good example of why I love my Leica so much. And you really have to see the before picture because I really messed this up. I couldn't quite get my light right. He was tired. And all the photos that were kind of sharp and great expression, didn't have great expressions. And then I don't know, I think my finger slipped on the so this shot was about 5 stops over. And and it's the one, the eyes are the one, the mouth is the one. And at the time, I kind of looked over it and I just thought, all right, it's gone. And then just recently, I was talking about going back into my archives. I went back in, I pulled it up and I brought it into Lightroom and I start kind of adjusting and put it in black and white and adjusting. I'm thinking, wow, this is going to actually work out. So, and I'm thrilled with it. I'm absolutely thrilled with it. And it's just, I think, something about digital cameras and that, and especially the Leica, the S, the files hold so much detail that I was able to retrieve this. I wish I'd done it 3-4 years ago when I shot it.
Yeah.
Just be able to retrieve it. And there's so much more detail. So I was kind of forced to make this kind of photograph, which was not the intent, but having the time to be able to go back to right now, to be able to go back into my work and say, you know what, I'm going to look at one photo today and see all the different ways I can process it and explore it and see what happens.
So is there anybody on your wish list in terms of people to photograph?
Oh, dead. No, there is definitely some.
Well, David Bowie, right? But
David Bowie, definitely. I mean, I'm just excited about anybody. It's not. I genuinely mean when I say that it doesn't even matter anymore. I love faces. I love the faces, and I love the communication, and it doesn't matter. It's cool when you're somebody or something, but everybody's cool. Everybody's got a story. Everybody's got something to say. So it genuinely doesn't matter. Oh, can I just say that one has had a lot of retouching.
Ethan Hawke?
Yeah. So, I take back everything I said 2 seconds ago because I really fixed his skin a little bit. Ignore previous statements.
Another ring light.
And also, it can also depend on your client. Sometimes the finished item has to be over retouched or retouched. This is one of my favorites, and I haven't done anything to that apart from literally just add some contrast. I got to photograph him 2 or 3 times, and in this one, I don't know if it's just me and now, but he was comfortable with me because he knew I was going to be fast. But now when I look at it, I just see something sad in his eyes that I never saw before. It's just a few months before it passed.
Yeah, wow.
Mark, I think it's this one and Robin Williams, especially when you presented at the Leica Store Boston in the last year. This shot and Robin Williams always gets people in their gut.
Yeah, definitely.
Thank you so much for having me, Leica Academy peoples.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you everyone for sticking around. Mark, did you want cool like maybe one or two more quick questions? We still have some.
Sure, I'm here. I just don't want to bore everybody, so.
No, no worries. Let's see. We've had a lot of questions, and we really appreciate everyone sticking with us here in overtime and submitting all these awesome questions. Mark, is there? You talked about like the look that you got. One time you made a mistake. Have you ever had situations where you came away uncertain about or you just weren't really happy with the work, but maybe the client was content? And how did that make you feel if you're ever in that kind of situation? There's a disconnect between how the client felt about the shoot, maybe how you felt about it.
Yeah, I mean, look, when you're working with, there's so many different, aspects of photography and photography jobs. Primarily, I see myself as very much a commercial photographer. I'm not an art photographer. And as a commercial photographer, somebody is paying me to make something. Now, hopefully, somebody has looked at what I do, likes what I do, likes what I bring to it, and is paying me for that, right? That's the hope. But sometimes that's not the case. So I make a very big effort to listen to what my client wants, to suggest maybe how I would do it differently, if they're open to it, but very much try to deliver what they want. And that has stood me pretty well in, clients being happy. And if the client really wants something that is so far away from what I would do, then I'll always try and create space or time to do what I would do anyway. I think I'm more disappointed in myself more than clients being disappointed in what I produce. Because when you look at my work and what you see is, if you come to me and say, hey, Mark, can you do this fashion shoot of so-and-so? I go, I don't know anything about fashion. I mean, I can maybe compose the pictures, but, if you get me a great stylist or a great person, I'm sure we can make great images. So I think if you're honest and I think if you manage the client's expectations, then I think you're gonna end up with happier clients. But very often I'll come away from a shoot and think, oh, I should have done this, or I should have done that, or why didn't I do this, or oh God, if I'd only asked him to take off that scarf, or so. And I think the day that I don't do that is maybe the day that I shouldn't really be doing this anymore anyway.
That's brilliant. Yeah, that's really really insightful, and like it's I think it's humbling for a lot of us who look up to photographers like you and your talents, and to know that you're always trying to improve as well. All right, last little question. So I got like a quick lightning round of these two questions. Like, a bunch of people asked we know you use the S and the SL2. A bunch of people have asked if you have ever dabbled with the Leica Q2 or the Q.
So when the Q2 came out, the Q came out. Okay, here's my true story about the Q. So the Q came out, and I went to the store. I got one, and I used it, and I loved it. And I'm not a street photographer. I'm a dreadful street photographer. I'm not great with Eddie lenses that are wide, but I would go out and I would see my kid or whatever in the street, and I'd take photos. I go, wow, these look like Leica pictures. Wow, I'm a photographer. They're like Leica look. And my wife was going on a scout, a location scout or something, and she said, "Can I borrow a camera?" I said, "Yeah, I've got this great camera. It's a Q." I set it up all on automatic and autofocus. I said, "Go, just press the button." So she comes home And I'm looking at the photos, I'm going, my wife is just taking photos that look like Leica pictures, and I'm not having that. So I was just, I was just so blown away by what they'd managed to do. The next time she used the camera, I took it off autofocus and didn't tell her, so all her pictures were blurry, and she never asked to borrow it again, which was kind of the way forward. I really hope you're not listening to that. Mention that to you. But yeah, the Q is a phenomenal camera. I love it. I love everything it does. Not so much for me because it's not how I shoot. And I wish that I was that person that, you know, would see something and shoot it and had that ability of the great street photographers or that just can go and see. I mean, I live in New York City. I walk past the most interesting stuff every day. I don't see it, you know. And then I'll go out with John on a photo walk, and John will go, "Oh, look at that," and I won't see it. So it's not the camera for me for portraits, but it's mind blowing the quality of what it does and how it gives you a Leica look.
And,
so,
and final question, and then we'll wrap it. Again, thank you everyone for sticking with us so long. If you can only take one Leica camera and one lens to a shoot, which is it?
Loaded.
Oh, we saved the best for last, man.
I could answer a question with a question. Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I'd take my S with the 120. That's
fair.
it.
Nothing wrong with that. But all right, that's all for questions. Thanks again, everyone, for submitting so many questions. We couldn't get to all of them, but we really appreciate it. And all the people, so many people are saying thanks, Mark, in the chat, and we really appreciate everyone sticking with us the whole time through here.
I'm truly humbled every time anybody asks me to do this, and I just hope that I can impart something of something. And I'm just so grateful to Leica and the Leica Academy, and I'm just, my mind is blown that anybody is actually interested in anything I've got to say. I think that comes from the fact that my wife is so uninterested in everything I have to say that, you know, it's such a pleasure for me when maybe people are. And I just finally, everybody stay safe, stay well.
Thanks, Mark. Really appreciate your time. And everyone, if you want to stay in touch with Mark, make sure you check out his website, markmanphoto.com. You can also follow him.
Yeah, DM me on Instagram. I'm really good at that.
At Instagram, right, at markmanphoto.com. Another way to follow Mark's work and see the images that he's digging out of the archive. As we had mentioned before, now available through the Leica Academy online is a bespoke with Mark Mann. And details are not only listed in the chat with the link, but also available online at leicaacademyusa.com. We have hopefully in March 2021, Inside the Artistic Process with Mark Mann in Boston. It's a great workshop. You'll learn a lot about portraiture, a lot about lighting, and you'll learn so much about retouching. You're going to need to hold your ears in. It's a great class. So that's all we have for today's program. Thank you very much, Mark Mann, for being a part of it. Thank you all for joining. And until the next time, we wish you good light. Take care.